What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to Fudge Muppet. Today we're going to be taking a trip back in time to the Third Era in the year 433, where the lands of Tamriel started to be ravaged by the Oblivion crisis and the invading daedra. This is where the events of Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion take place, and it's one of my favorite places on the Elder Scrolls timeline. You see, while so many crazy things were going down, like the assassination of Emperor Uriel Septim VII and Kvatch being absolutely destroyed by daedra pouring out of an Oblivion gate, there were also other things which went largely unnoticed. It was the perfect time for many dark secrets to be forgotten, as compared to the other happenings of the time. They would never make their way into the history books. These dark secrets weren't nearly as important as Mehrunes Dagon stepping into the Imperial City now, were they? One of these sinister secrets was truly chilling to experience when I first played Oblivion, and this video will obviously contain some spoilers from that game, my first ever Elder Scrolls experience, and perhaps my favorite. Very excitingly, I'm so keen to play Oblivion that we're gonna start streaming it in a new playthrough on Twitch, so check out the link to our channel in the description if you want to see us do some sensational Oblivion quests live. But that all said, it's time to introduce the Countess of Leyawiin, Alicia Caro. Alicia is married to the Count of the city, Mehrunes Caro, and she's actually the daughter of the Countess of Coral. As you can tell, Alicia is an Imperial of great nobility, and as you'll find out, she has some very controversial political views. She's very pro-empire and loves the imperial culture, so much so that she despises the other cultures which might also have an influence in her territory. She hates Argonians, Khajiit, and even Dark Elves. If you decide to play as an Argonian, she even says to you,
"I am Countess Alessia Caro, wife to Count Marius. I think Leyawiin would be better off if we removed all the dirty Argonians such as yourself. You wouldn't have a problem with that, would you?"
She desperately wants to imperialize the region, and sadly for the beast races, many of them prove her viewpoint right by being criminals and nuisances themselves. Now, for those who don't know, Leyawiin is filled with Khajiit and Argonian, and there are even staff in Castle Leyawiin of these two beast races. They're obviously very uncomfortable with the views of the Countess, along with most other citizens in the city who have scales or fur. One of the castle advisors is an Argonian named Onsteia Sunju. She's a thief class character who is the chief advisor of Count Marius. Onsteia Sunju will actually talk about the issue, explaining,
"Leyawiin has always been a melting pot of races and cultures. Of course, racial and cultural conflicts produce inefficiencies and confusion. I fear Lady Leyawiin and Ladara Mothril plan to push the minorities aside and establish a bland imperial-dominated culture here in Leyawiin."
By the way, Ladara Mothril is a high elf who is Alicia Caro's advisor and chaplain. She follows Alicia everywhere and agrees with her political views. However, we will soon find out that she knows of Alicia Caro's dark secret and isn't the biggest fan of that part. Onsteia Sunju may be the chief advisor, but it's fairly obvious her services aren't really wanted. Nevertheless, she works hard for the Count, using her position to keep an eye on things, making sure there's no plan for an uprising racial takeover in the city. Also in the castle, we have Tsavi, who is the castle mage and happens to be a Khajiit. Tsavi agrees with Onsteia and will be more than happy to tell you,
"I have been happy enough in the Count's service, but I am not so happy about his lovely wife and her Nibbanean advisor. Lady Alicia is uncomfortable with Khajiit ways, and Argonian ways, and Dunmer ways. She is only comfortable with pure white-bread Nibbaneans."
This is interesting because, as we will find out, it is hinted at that he shares in the same dark secret as his wife, which I will reveal shortly. But this foundational understanding of who these nobles are and what their city is like is really interesting to explore. As you'd expect, Marius also isn't a fan of Argonians and Khajiit. Weirdly enough though, he did have all these beast races employed in his castle, and it is implied that he is whipped by his new wife. So perhaps his distaste towards the beast races is just him agreeing blindly with Alicia, although I think there's a good chance he's never been their biggest fan. Marius being influenced by his wife Alicia is actually hinted at by an Argonian in the Five Claws Lodge. Surprisingly, she agrees with Alicia's viewpoints, stating,
"We all love Count Marius and his father before him. Arche bless his soul. Such a fine young man. And now his new wife, So beautiful, so fine. And wise? Oh, yes. The new Lady Leyawiin is daughter to Countess Ariana Valga, County Coral. And so she knows just how the county should be run. Lady Alicia tells Count Marius exactly what to do, and he does as she says.
Perhaps this Argonian, while she doesn't want to be treated badly herself, acknowledges that the beast races have brought problems, one of them being crime and violence. Here's one big example. So if you don't know Cyrodiil too well, Leyawiin is a city located at the very southeast of Cyrodiil, extremely close to the eastern border of Elsewhere, homeland of the Khajiit. So close in fact that during part of the Second Era, Elsewhere basically controlled it. They gained control of the Transnibbon, and while Leyawiin seemed like it was part of the province of Cyrodiil at the time, it was mostly a Khajiit settlement that they controlled. County Leyawiin was eventually given back to the Imperials with an agreement between the governments of Elsewhere and Cyrodiil, and many Khajiit hated this controversial decision, believing the land belonged to them. This gave rise to a criminal organization known as the Renridra Mauer, which translates to the Mercenaries' Grin. They performed heaps of terrorist attacks throughout County Leyawiin in rebellion, and this has given the Khajiits in the city a bad name. This is why you might find a rare amount of beast races who would prefer things to become more imperial, so long as they aren't tossed out, of course. Leyawiin is also pretty close to Blackmarsh, so you can understand how it is really quite the melting pot of cultures. Obviously, there's a lot of racial tensions in the city, with the Khajiit hating the Argonians, and the Argonians hating the Khajiit, and a lot of Imperials hating both. The Plotius family is a prime example. They are two Imperial commoners who are married, Beto and Julita. If you ask Beto about Leyawiin, he will say,
"I've lived in Leyawiin all my life, and I must say, the Count has found himself a pretty little bride, and a smart one, too. We need some law and order. Bring in the legions. Leyawiin for the Imperials, I say. No sense coddling those Renridra Kryn bandits."
And Julita, his wife, will tell you,
Well, I don't know much about politics, but I think Lady Alicia's right. We've got to put a stop to all these bandits and rabble in the Transnibbon. I know the Khajiit are all upset that the Council took away their land and gave it to us, but they just have to get over it. It's our land now.
Anyway, so there's a lot of detail to the city of Leyawiin, the cultural tensions within, and the political views that come with it. But what is the dark secret of Alicia Caro? Surely the Countess hating beast races isn't that much of a secret. After all, she admits it freely and everyone knows it. Well, that brings us to this realization, and that is that Alicia Caro is a full-on psycho. Alicia Caro not only hates Argonians, Khajiit, and Dark Elves, but she actually tortures them mercilessly with her own secret torture chamber and various torture devices. In fact, the torture room is so disgusting that blood is left everywhere uncleaned. It looks very fresh at all times. But there's not just a table in this room covered in blood, there's also chains hanging from the roof, chains with cuffs attached so the victims can be held in place to the side of the main table, or if stretched, torn in two directions from the main table and twisted in painful ways. There's a huge pair of calipers and a pair of tongs on the side table for pinching and tearing at victims. I imagine to tear off fur and scales and whatever else. And then there's a full-on silver warhammer on the table too, for when you want to crack knees, ribs, and eventually skulls. Speaking of skulls, there's a skull on this side table here too, just in case the room wasn't disturbing enough. You need the people you torture to be scared, right? Oh, and on the main table, there's also a knife and a fork. Is Alicia so crazy that she eats their flesh? It's anyone's guess, but personally, I think they're just there for her to cause a sickening amount of pain and grief. It is said her husband also gets involved with this torture, and what I find very strange is all the chairs in the room facing the table. Perhaps they're just there so that multiple prisoners can watch others get tortured, but there's something about them that appears as if they're sat in by those who want to watch for pleasure. Maybe Marius and Alicia take turns while the other watches, and perhaps they bring some of their noble friends who are also sick in their head. There's also some pretty nice looking candles next to the chairs, which convinces me just slightly more that the chairs are there for viewers' entertainment. installment. Then again, the candles could just be to further illuminate the room, and based on the rest of the stuff in this den, I can't help but imagine they're occasionally used to slowly burn some very unlucky Argonians. Next to the side table, there's also a shovel for when you want blunt force but you're bored of the warhammer, and why not just have a gigantic pitchfork there too? It seems Alicia Caro is literally the devil. In the room, there's also locked chests with various randomized items. I found a paintbrush and a pickaxe in one, and a steel war axe and some armor in another. It never stops, does it? If you go to the bedroom in which Marius and Alicia Caro sleep, you'll also find alchemical equipment set up on a table, and a few books on alchemy, and also some books on Argonians too. Perhaps Alicia Caro likes to test out some homemade poisons in her torture chamber, but even if this isn't the case, she's still one serious sicko based on the rest of the evidence. But how did we even uncover this dark secret, and where is this torture chamber? Well, you can just go to the chamber straight away if you know where it is, but for most people you'll be finding it during the Thieves Guild questline, one of my favorite guild adventures in any Elder Scrolls title. So what happens is, there's a former Thieves Guild Khajiit known as Adaji, and her ring was stolen by another thief. Your mission is to get this ring back, seeing as the guild frowns on freelance thieves who aren't part of their ranks. So after you head to Leyawiin and talk to the eyes and ears of the Thieves Guild, aka the Beggars, you find the location of Adaji in the city. After you talk to her, she will tell you an Argonian stole her ring, a scaly individual by the name of Amuse. Now, for those of you who have played Oblivion, you'll know that Amuse is a recurring Thieves Guild character, but that's not particularly important to go into for this video. Adaji wants you to get the ring back from him and to make him suffer. You then go talk to more beggars to find out he's actually in jail for trying to con Alicia Caro herself. I must say, it really seems like her hatred towards Argonians comes from a place of experience, even though her actions aren't justified. Anyways, so you go visit Amuse, bribe a guard to let the Argonian prisoner have a visitor, or just stealth your way in there. You bribe Amuse with a lockpick so he can get out of there, and in return he tells you that it turns out the ring didn't originally belong to Adaji at all. The ring belonged to the Countess, and when he tried to ransom it back to her, he was jailed. Now Alicia Caro has the ring, her ring. You then tell Adaji that Amuse tried to sell the ring back, and then she agrees to pay you double to steal it back for her, as she will make better use of it, apparently. You then start hearing of the torture chamber when you go back to the Beggars for more information. You're directed to that high elf, Hladara Mothril, the one who follows Alicia everywhere, and the Beggars can mention,
You should know that there are other secrets in that castle. I've heard of a hidden torture chamber. They say that Count Marius interrogates Argonian immigrants from Black Marsh. The servants whisper that the Argonians are dragged into the basement and never seen again.
This is how we know Marius does it, but we find out Alicia does it too when we finally get Hladara's disposition high enough to confirm the truth of the hidden chamber. Hladara will say,
"Shh! It's dangerous to be heard talking about that! The Countess has a secret passage somewhere in the basement that leads to her private quarters. That's where the torture chamber is. Sometimes I can hear the screams of the prisoners when I'm in my chambers."
So while Hladara agrees with the politics of Alicia, she's pretty traumatized by the torture side of things. You then proceed to head into the basement, pull the secret lever in the barrel next to the door outlined shape, and the door opens. You follow this into a pathway that leads to the torture chamber, and from the torture chamber you can follow the path onwards to get near the Count's quarters, where you can come across Alicia Caro's bedroom and steal her ring from the jewelry box next to her bed while she's sleeping. You'll need to watch out for patrolling guards, especially if you're a beast race. You wouldn't want to find yourself locked up and tortured by a lunatic countess, would you? Return the ring and get your reward for this Thieves Guild quest, and pray to Nocturnal that you won't be scarred for the rest of your life. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the dark secret of Countess Alessia Caro, hidden in a secret chamber deep within Castle Leyawiin. Thank you so much for watching this video, and be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new and want more, and please do tell me if you do, because I'm more than happy to talk about my Elder Scrolls childhood game, Oblivion. Our Twitch channel is linked in the description, so come along for that. We'll be streaming Oblivion very, very soon. My name is Michael, this was the dark secret of Alicia Caro, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.